Good morning. I have such mixed feelings. I'm really glad there's a smaller crowd because I really wanted lots of people to go hear Bill in the service, in the Odyssey service. But as people trickled in, I also got really excited that more people were coming. So I've kind of been flip-flopping about that. Let's start out with a prayer. The Lord be with you. Dear love and energy that surrounds and connects all of us, be with us this morning as we explore new ways of thinking and seeing and being together. Let anything that I say this morning that contributes to the truth be heard and understood and make a difference in the way that we see each other and love each other. And if anything is said that does not contribute to the truth, let it be forgotten as soon as it's transmitted. Amen. So, I am going out on a limb a little bit this morning because I am not a biblical scholar. I have not been to seminary. In fact, I have a new relationship with Scripture that's quite young. So part of my journey was to stay away from the church for many, many years. And so I hope, this is why I kind of phrased the prayer the way that I did, I hope that the way I talk about this piece of Scripture contributes to love and unity, and that it's in no way doing harm. So, I'll just say that. So, in going through the different books that I have for Lent and the readings that are part of the liturgy for this season, the little book that I was using talks about the story where Jesus goes to the temple and throws the tables over, turns the tables over of all the merchants that are around the temple. And so here is the way it's written in the Gospel of Jesus with Robert Funk that Bill Curley's used. Jesus went into the temple and began chasing the vendors and shoppers out of the temple area. And he turned the bankers' tables upside down, along with the chairs of the pigeon merchants. Then he started teaching and would say to them, "Don't the Scriptures say, my house is to be regarded as a house of prayer for all peoples, but you have turned it into a hideout for crooks." So I raised this question with my Facebook friends this week. I asked people, well, first of all, I'm asked myself, what could the temple be? What could the temple mean to each of us? What could the temple represent to each of us? And my thought is that it's really that combined love, energy, complete connectedness, sacred mystery, God, Buddha nature, however you frame it yourself, and that the question I wanted to raise was, what keeps us from living in that beautiful energy of love and unity, compassion, and oneness? So I asked my Facebook friends this question: what keeps you from fully participating in love and compassion in your daily life? And I got immediately from my sister-in-law and my mom, I got within like 2 seconds, I don't know how they were so aware, but within 2 seconds, boom, boom, fear. And so as someone who studied the Enneagram for a few years, I thought, okay, I know my mom's a 7 and my sister-in-law's a 7, and so, you know, of course, we're on the fear side. I'm a 6 and on the Enneagram. And, you know, fear is definitely something that separates me. But then all these other answers came from all these other people that I went to high school with that I haven't seen in 20 years since I moved away from my hometown. People that I know here from St. Paul's who have been Center and Prayer Group started answering. And so they were fear. And then I asked the question, okay, fear of what? You know, dig a little bit deeper. Fear of isolation, rejection, ridicule, judgment, intolerance, betrayal. And so that was kind of the list. They continued to pour in. I think I got more comments on that one post than I've gotten on any other post. Had 62 comments at the end of it, so that made me feel like, well, this is somehow a place where people feel safe and vulnerable to say what that problem is. That's really cool. So I started thinking about, in relation to our ego and the Enneagram, how that informs us about how we respond to these things that separate us from the temple. You know, if we're afraid of being judged, we're afraid of being rejected, we're afraid of being ridiculed, we're afraid of isolation, betrayal, judgment. What are the responses we have to those fears? And so I started to look at, what do our coping strategies that we use look like to other people? So depending on how we've grown up and what defense strategies we've learned, what coping strategies we've learned over time, we may respond to those with some of these strategies like isolating ourselves or turning away a little bit as a protective device, projecting or judging other people. We may busy ourselves with lots of different tasks. We might acquire more and more stuff and build up our image. We may push ourselves to finding new fun things to do all the time. There's a lot of different ways we respond to these fears. And we may appear to be indifferent, you know, the whole whatever thing that went around, you know, that's a defense mechanism. It's a coping strategy that we use. And if you want to learn more about which ones you use and how you can kind of stop yourself, the Enneagram is a great place to go to understand what coping strategies you're using. So my 12-year-old couldn't believe I was going to use these stretches I was doing really quickly, but I was like, don't worry about it, because if I have a fear of being judged here, then that would be a little hypocritical, so I'm just going to go for it. So I had this visual of thinking about the temple being this source of light and energy and unity, and that this ring of red dots are our wounds, our wounds, our suffering. It's the things we're afraid of, and that we've kind of built a shell around that source in a way, and those what the red dots represent. And then the blue lines are our coping strategies, the things we apply to that suffering and that fear. So that's what the blue rectangles represent. And those, for this purposes of this talk, on this possible connection with turning the tables over at the temple, those blue lines are the tables that need turning. So how does the media and advertising affect our coping strategies and our relationship with our suffering. How does that affect how we process this fear that we carry with us? So I started thinking about, if we've built this shell, this filter of things around the divine energy in ourselves, the gooey soft center that we have, with this shell of suffering and this shell of fears and coping strategies, the media, when you watch the news, I stopped watching the news a few years ago because I think I realized I couldn't turn these tables over. I couldn't get rid of this constant flipping from fear to my defense mechanism back and forth with this constant, like, you need to be afraid, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, be afraid. And so I just turned it off. And, slowly I'm trying to find sources where I can still know what's going on in the world and educate myself, but to have strong enough base to be able to take that constant barrage. And then the media plays on these fears and our suffering because, they know what we're dealing with. They know all these things about how the human brain works. And then the marketing comes in with, here's how I can help you with your coping strategies. Here's how I can help you get more and more stuff to build your image. Here's how I can help you hang on to your youth and avoid, the oncoming change. And so if our coping strategies are be competitive, stay busy, numb yourself out, work on your image, be angry, compare yourself to others, or just worry about yourself and turn away from everything else that's going on, or be indifferent, take the whatever pose. There's lots of stuff in the media that really support us learning these coping strategies better. And so to me, those are the people at the tables around the temple selling their wares, putting on fancy displays, trying to get your attention. And so we get in this loop of, I'm afraid, here's some strategies. I'm afraid, here's some strategies. And what we're not doing is dealing with the suffering and the pain that we're avoiding. So all this keeping us busy around the perimeter is keeping us from the suffering to some degree, but it's not helping us deal with the suffering, transform the suffering. And so what helps us turn those tables over, what helps us get to healing the suffering and really building a base, really spending more time in the temple and not more time around the perimeter. And I think that's having an awareness of our strategies, having an awareness of our pain and our own individual wounds. It's developing the ability to make different decisions. And the only way we do that, I think, is to focus on or find the pause in between the stimulus, the fear factor, whatever's coming in at us. We're able to stop and say, okay, I have free will here. I have the ability to respond differently, not react, not an automatic reaction, but to go to my core, come from the love and compassion, and make a different response. And that takes courage. It takes a lot of courage before we can make that response. So I think I just flipped through these a bunch. So what our center, our divine indwelling, has for us is grace and faith and resilience, and spiritual practice allows us to spend time in this area. When I first started meditating, I thought, this is great. I need this time alone. I've got, little kids. I need to spend some time slowing down, and this is great for that. After doing it for a while, I realized it has it has a lot to do with that, but the big difference is the way it affects when all the time I'm not meditating, when I'm picking up the kids, when the kids can't get out the door on time, when there's chaos and confusion and there's lots of stimulus. That's when the meditation really comes in handy, because then I can find that pause and I can connect before I respond. And this is what I think spiritual practice does for us. It gives us that foundation and that practice. A lot of times I think about the research on building new neural pathways and doing something over and over again until it becomes a new habit and it becomes something that's, part of the structure that exists that allows us to do new things. Spiritual practice is, I think, a way of doing that. And it has application in our waking moments, not just in the 5 minutes we give it or the 15 minutes we give it. And in centering prayer, one of the things that I've been so excited that's happened for me personally is that there's a divine therapy that happens. There's a healing that comes from the source that allows us to deal with our suffering in some way. It's not, I kind of want to say that it's going to cure everybody's ailments or whatever, but there's a much deeper healing that happens from our original wounds, our, the isolation, the separation, the rejection, all those things that we fear. Those can be healed when you do spiritual practice that unites you with that source. And when grace is applied to that suffering. Then suddenly all the blue stuff, all those coping strategies they're still there, but it's not the only way anymore to deal with that. So I think I kind of went through this already, how spiritual practice and meditation, building resilience to these things and contemplation helps you find that pause in the moment. So here's just a slide about that blue line, that circle, that intersection that we come to is the pause. So when we are able to recognize that opportunity exists for us to make a different choice, and we can decide how we're going to respond to something, rather than our ego just going straight to having a violent reaction or, the other coping mechanisms. We can say, wait, I could do this differently. Then we engage understanding, faith, patience, compassion, acceptance, vulnerability, and love. And when I had talked to, had done the little survey on Facebook with my friends, I was thinking, we all want exactly the same thing. Unfortunately, we also all automatically respond to ways that negatively affect what we really want and our fears. But the more of us who do spiritual practice and do this inner work and find this choice moment, this pause moment, and respond with more compassion and love, the more of that yellow glowing energy is outside the tables, right? And the more neural pathways, the more little inroads we could have. I'm using my hands when I ask for a pointer. See if I can go back to this. Hope I'm not making anybody dizzy. But if we do more of the work that happens in here, then more of this light can find new pathways outside here. The more of that can affect this area. People can begin to see there are other choices. There's not just one strategy. I don't have to buy more stuff. I don't have to keep up with my image. I don't have to pretend like I don't care and be indifferent. I have other options. And the more of us who are connecting with the vulnerability and the courage and the compassion, to me, that's where you say, do your inner work first, and then you will be a source for others on the outside. What makes this really tough is that over time, I think, we identify so much of who we are with these coping mechanisms and strategies. And so that giving them up feels like losing ourselves. And that's tricky, because if we're getting to that suffering and we're really starting to heal the old wounds and focus on that, it's easy to want to jump back outside that circle, and especially if we're feeling lost or feeling like we're losing ourselves, right? But this is where we really have to be courageous. We have to die another death, have another resurrection. We need to let go of what has been defining for us. And so this is where I think Brené Brown's work really becomes important for us to understand, is that vulnerability takes courage. It takes a lot of courage to turn the tables over. It takes a lot of courage to let go of what's been defending us, but is no longer helping us in our growth and transformation. So we have to be courageous. So I'll do a little bit of a funny spiritual practice. Sometimes I just take this Psalms for Praying book by Nancy Merrill and just like open it to any page. And so I was searching for part of a psalm that worked with this talk. Actually, that's not true. I was doing the opening the book, and then I thought, okay, well, this will work. And then a couple days later, I thought, well, this one will work. So I had a hard time figuring out which one to use. But I like this one a lot. Be not afraid to discover the treasure within, to seek the gold hidden in the garden of your heart. For inasmuch as you can root out each fear, with truth and peace and joy become your riches. Not with truth, will truth and peace and joy become your riches. You will live in the realm of love, becoming a light, a beneficial presence in the world. Future generations will be blessed, the bonds of ignorance broken forever. O Spirit of truth, you are our strength and our guiding light. Lead us to the eternal treasure, the heart of all hearts. So, since I started working on this talk, I went to class at the Spiritual Direction Institute on Friday at the Pinnacle, and we had another class on the Enneagram and transformation. So if you'll bear with me for a second, I want to, let me see if I can get back without making anyone dizzy. Good. One of the things that we talk about is that, like, when we're born, we're pretty much here, right? I mean, we can't get any closer than we were the day we were born to being in that juicy, soft center, that divine indwelling. And as we grow older, unfortunately, there's a lot more of those little red beads that pop up around us. And when we talk about the Enneagram, our response to these things is what gets us into how we deal with that wound. Our defense mechanisms that we use are really in line with what our type is. So that can really inform us about how we are going to respond. And so these blue rectangles are predictable for us. I mean, I think that's what's so cool about the Enneagram and using it in transformation. And the way that Sister Lois explained it was that, like, the unique gifts that we're given from God, our own individual experience with this divine energy, that gift gets turned inward. So instead of being a light for the world, this original wounding becomes, we turn it in on ourselves and we use all these ego defense mechanisms to help us stay safe or whatever it is. And so I kind of thought about it like a Band-Aid, or some gauze mesh that we put over the part of us that's most wounded. In the Enneagram, there's head center, feeling center, and gut center. So you think about, those being, one gets overdeveloped more than the other two, depending on which center you're in. And so the work of transformation is about evening it out. So you want to develop the feeling. For me, I'm a head type, so I needed to develop the heart center and the gut center more and get things all working as one engine together. And it also dawned on me, when I 8 years ago, I guess almost, when I had my big rock bottom, I could call it a million different things: corporate burnout, midlife crisis, conversion, whatever you want to call it. It explains why it was so devastating, because that was such a hard fall. It felt like I ripped the Band-Aid off. It was that painful and almost that quick. And that new skin that's underneath there is real tender and real sensitive. And so at the same time, I think it also makes us, when the Band-Aid's completely gone, it makes us more open to different strategies, new things, trying different ways to deal with the pain, or to heal the wounds, because I couldn't use my old strategies anymore because they were so obviously not working. That I had to find other ways, other methods to deal with the pain and suffering. And so I've kind of made it my personal mission since then to teach nonviolent communication and the Enneagram and spiritual practice, because I'd like to think that not everybody has to yank the Band-Aid off like I did. If you could just kind of slowly learn some new strategies, or, soak it in some spiritual practice for a little while and let the adhesive get kind of soft before you do it, that might be a little bit better than the way I did it. So I did not time this talk today. I had no idea how long this was going to take, and I think I'm going to end up a little short. But maybe we could do some practices. Since we don't have Conspire, I could lead you through a practice. So my charge to you this morning is to go ahead and take down your displays, turn over your tables. You might want to just kind of gently turn over a table and try another one rather than ripping the Band-Aid off. But try different spiritual practices. Look for other strategies. One of the things I love about nonviolent communication and the way it works with the Enneagram, I might just fill up the rest of the time right now, is nonviolent communication allows us to the process allows us to connect with the need we're trying to meet. So it gives us the awareness of what we're wanting in the moment, whether it's understanding, to be heard, to be respected. And once we have that awareness, we move into what are we going to do, what strategies are we going to use to get those needs met. Then those strategies can be strategies that don't negatively affect other people as much, right? If we're doing it with compassion and understanding, and we accept the fact that all of us have those same needs and desires, we're going to want to choose strategies that are sensitive to all the other people out there just wanting the same things as us. They're our equals. They want the same things. Actually, they're not they, we. We are all part of something that needs and wants all these things, so we're going to pick strategies that respect that, not that play off the fears and the suffering of everyone around us. So that's one of the reasons I love the practice of nonviolent communication, because it helps us see, first of all, have the hope and understanding that there are other strategies. We don't need to keep using the ones just because they worked when we were, ages 4 to 30 or whatever. There are other options. And then if we are in community with other people who are practicing this is why there's lots of practice groups around town, then it's a safe place to be vulnerable and say, here's some strategies for how to deal with that. How would that affect you? Or, do you have ideas about other ways to deal with this? And in safe little gooey centers, outside those blue tables of, coping strategies that negatively affect us, we're able to build centers of learning together how we can respond with love and compassion and support each other in that way. So to me, the Enneagram, understanding our patterns, and this God gave you this gift of, Judy, what's my gift? Courage is the big one. Courage in spite of the fear. Yeah, and the other gift that sixes have is seeing around the corner and intuiting things that are coming that need different strategies. So that's why I get so excited about this, because this is the gift that God gave me, is the ability to see other ways of doing things, and to have, when I get in touch with my gooey center and kind of heal a lot of that pain and suffering, then I can do things like talk to crowds of people and come from that with courage. Yeah. Being able to support the underdog, to connect with other people who are in that same stance, really empathizing with others in that situation. So this is something I got on a tangent on Friday in this Enneagram class, but so if this light inside the temple is energy, and our original wounding and suffering over the years makes us turn that in and not share it with the world, and the Enneagram wisdom and nonviolent communication are catalysts for turning it around. They're like catalytic converters. You think about our conversion experience. Our conversion experience is about taking that bundled up protective self and learning to take that inversion and turn it over and have this conversion of energy where it comes out of us. And we engage our ego in action that's full of compassion rather than what makes us smaller. So I encourage you to find your catalytic converters and begin to let that energy convert and flow outward. Leslie? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. And here's my frame, like a reframe, and I want to make sure everybody hears what you said too. So you said that as you get older, you have fewer fears, and the fears that you do have are different than the fears that you had before. And when you center down and you practice, then you realize that you are safe. I am. So I'm going to go back to this slide again that my 12-year-old cringed at, but I'm okay with. So this out here, I think, is the realm of I do because, right? Or maybe it's these blue. The blue rectangles are I do because all of these things are affecting my own inner wisdom, my own knowledge about these things that have happened to me in real life or that cause my suffering. So if I spend my time out here, and I'm going to address the timing issue a little bit differently. So as we develop and go through different developmental stages, some of these things might have gotten healed, right? And this is totally just a theory I'm just throwing out. But some of these things might be healed or partially healed or don't bug us as much as they used to. But we may have new ones that have popped up. And we have these tables, these strategies, and they don't work anymore. Because they're not working on this guy over here, they're working on this guy over here. And so the strategies that we have don't necessarily grow with our fears changing or our experiences changing. And if we don't have an awareness of that, then we find ourselves in this point of like, I can't do this anymore. This point I was a few years ago. I just didn't have the strategies I needed to deal with the stage of life issues that had changed. But when we center and we heal these, and we sit in light, and we sit with the I am, we sit with grace, and we, be still and know that I am God, and we practice that kind of foundation, then suddenly, I think, like you said, we're not as afraid, or we have a much stronger base to be able to take this kind of ego show that's going on out here and to look at our coping mechanisms and realize, maybe I need to do things differently or see people differently or respond with compassion because I understand someone else is responding in fear, and it's not that they're a bad person, it's that their strategies aren't working for them. Then this spiritual practice, the centering down and facing those fears and being still and being receptive to grace, receptive to the oneness and the unity, gives us the strength that we need to not respond so much in fear. Or I should say react so much in fear. Let's see. I did not think about doing a practice, and I'm not sure that we have much time. Maybe I'll give you a charge. I'll give you a homework assignment then. In nonviolent communication, one of the first steps is to recognize that you have a choice. So if we're really, really tied to these blue tables, to our regular way of dealing things, then we'll say, I have to go to work. I have to get you to school on time. You have to clean up your dishes. It's a have to, must, I'm trapped mentality, and we use those words a lot. But in nonviolent communication, one of the things we do is we practice saying, I choose to because, and it gives us an awareness of why we make the choices we make. So I would challenge all of you to catch yourself when you hear the words, I have to, I can't, I must, you should, all of those things. Practice thinking about what those actions are tied to. What needs are they tied to? Let's see if I can give some examples. So I have to go to work would be I choose to go to work because I like the financial security. I like being able to provide for the family. And that's like bare bones if I was at the job I used to be, where I got to the point where, those were the needs, those were like the main needs. But another way, if you love your job and you get a lot of needs met by going there, it might sound like, I choose to get up and go to work because I love the autonomy. I love the choices I get to make. I love that I'm making a difference. I love the connection and the community, the people that I work with. You can go on and on and on. I choose to go to the grocery store after school because I want to put a healthy meal on the table. Or I choose to cook dinner tonight instead of doing takeout because I like to have the extra money for other choices so that we have more choice. So these are just ways to kind of reframe your talking, and it's almost like fake it until you make it, You say these things and you connect with the needs, and you'll find that you'll start to make more aware choices because your language has changed and you're practicing. You're practicing connecting with your needs. Mm-hmm.
So I was just thinking how closely this ties in.
Yeah, and if you also look, Cindy's 4-step process is also very related to the nonviolent communication process too. So I think there's lots of different strategies out there that are similar. Yeah. And that's a good thing because we want choices, right, about how we do that. All right, so I think we're close, and I will, yes?
Jesus was mad at these people in the temple. Was he justifiably mad? Are there occasions when we are justifiably mad at things that are going on? And I guess we can eat ourselves up about those, or is you're encouraging, we just walk away from those, or do we actually confront them and say there's something wrong here?
Okay, so I'll answer that with this. Jesus, I think our call is to respond. Our call is to respond to those things. But how we respond to those things is very different if it's reactive and coming from a place of fear and anger. It's a very different response than if it comes from compassionate, foundational, unitive understanding. I think we are called to make a difference and to be guideposts of justice and compassion in the world. We're not called to ignore suffering and pain, but we're called to act from the unit of light source, from our compassionate hearts. And Judy wants to add, and I'm glad.
And also, I don't think anger is ever good or bad. It's a feeling. It's what we do with it.
It takes a lot of work for us to respond with the same fire and amount of energy that Jesus had in a loving way. Does that make sense? Because we're all human. We're like 100% human. We all have the divine indwelling in us, but we have to work at that divine indwelling expressing itself in the world. And I can get really passionate, but it's about making a difference in the world, about, looking out for people who are not as empowered with the tools. But the way I respond to others, if I am in a place where I truly believe they're human just like me and have all the same needs just like me, then I'm less likely to use tools that divide us to come at that and come with tools that bring us together. Does that make sense?
So I didn't go get the mic just for me. I was going to move it around. Sorry. But I had a thought that Bill has talked before in here and in other conversations about being non-judgmental, and then saying you can never be non-judgmental, that all the practice can do is help you recognize it sooner and get out of it sooner. And it seems like this fear, that same thought process could apply to that. That the fears maybe don't go away, but you get better at getting out of that sooner.
Yeah.
Kind of an extension of that is my experience is that not all wounds heal. That some wounds you can't heal. You can transcend, you can move on from those wounds, but you can't necessarily heal them. I also don't think that fear is always or even regularly necessarily coupled with anger. So
I believe that anger is a strategy for accomplishing some need, and it can be appropriate or not appropriate. And there's a difference between judgment and discernment. Discernment is more responsive than it is reactive.
And just to add on to that, I'm trying to remember, I'm losing it. This is how we're like going rogue and not having any notes is dangerous because I can't remember the words. But discernment is engaging your heart, and reactivity doesn't necessarily engage the heart first. Is that?
I do want to say that in the Zealot it explained that Jesus in the temple was outraged, righteously so, for the sake of the people who were being taken advantage of. It was just sinful what they were doing to the poor. And that was he was driven by that righteous anger.
For fear, like saying the same thing everyone else is saying. I wanted to add that, a lot of people are afraid of anger or they're afraid of their fear, but actually those emotions are given to us as a gift. Anger is nothing in the world but energy. And the key to the whole thing is you being in control of the energy and not letting the energy be in control of you. So anger is a very, very useful tool if it's used correctly, and you be the one driving the bus, you in conjunction with your God.
Mm-hmm. And for me, nonviolent communication and the Enneagram and the self-awareness and the body awareness that allows you to connect with those sensations of anger and fear and process that with love is a way to empower ourselves with those emotions. So if I think I might have gotten on my soapbox. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things the therapist told me a long time ago was that pure anger is justifiable. I mean, if you don't have emotions, both high emotions and low emotions, then you are removing yourself from experiencing the joys and the grief in life. And that person told me that one of the differences between anger and rage is that rage is anger that comes with a desire to punish.
Yeah, so if we are in a place where we believe that every other person has the divine indwelling and is part of us, then I think we want to respond with love and compassion and not punishment.
All right, one more.
I just wanted to remind everyone that we have a wonderful tool right outside the doors of the sanctuary with the labyrinth. So take this question that Brooke has presented and walk the labyrinth with it and see what happens. You know, go in, see where your tables are. See what it feels like to be in the center of the labyrinth, in the center of the temple with the rays of the light and love, and use that walk as a spiritual practice to get in touch with this. For those of you that enjoy being outside, that now that the weather is getting a little bit better, we'll have a nice day here soon. And so I just recommend using what we have right here.
Yeah. Thanks. And just, I guess because I'm gonna have to process this later, but I just wanted to say that in my using this scripture, I really wanted to bring up the issue of how we respond to the tables around the temple, not as an explanation of what Jesus was doing when he turned over the tables, but just the concept of their existence, what they could represent for us personally, and how we could make a difference in the world in responding to them.
Thank you, Brooke, for all that today. And see you next month.